Hi there, my name is Melinda. I'm one of the expert teachers here at E2 Language. Could you pop something into the chat just to let me know that you can hear me, that you're there? In fact, tell me where you're from, which country do you come from? So just pop something into the chat. Okay. And while we're talking about the chat, always use the chat, not the Q&A. If you use the Q&A, teachers often miss it. So if you want to communicate, the best way is through the chat. Q&A, it's risky. Often we miss it. Okay, we've only got a few people here, but I'm sure more of you will be joining us soon. We've got Jothika from Fiji. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Ivy from Hong Kong, but currently in Cairns in Australia. Okay, I'm a little bit south of you, Ivy. I'm on the Gold Coast, so way down the other side of Queensland, or the other end of Queensland, Ivy. Quite pleasant weather today here on the Gold Coast. So guys, who else is with us? Pop something into the chat. Where are you from? And we'll get started in a moment. Okay, yes, I love the Gold Coast too. In fact, I like Cairns as well. I was recently up in Port Douglas. I think Port Douglas is lovely. For the rest of you, Port Douglas is kind of a holiday resort. It's just a little bit north of where Ivy is in Cairns. Very nice place to spend a few days. And we've got Tvani from India. Welcome, Tvani. Thank you for joining us. And who have we got on YouTube? We've got Simran from Perth. And we've got Saida. Welcome, Saida. And Nezan from India. And Kashyap, welcome. And Harpreet, welcome. And Monisha, originally from Sri Lanka, currently in New Zealand. Okay, we say over the ditch being a hole, so New Zealand is over the hole from Australia. Okay, who else have we got? Good morning, Divine. Lovely to meet you. And Maya from Brisbane. Okay, we've got a few Queenslanders and the odd New Zealander with us too. So welcome, everyone. Okay, so let's get started. I'll just share my screen. Okay, and you should be able to see what's on my screen. I should have shrunk and you should be able to see what's on my screen. And this is what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to look briefly at what's coming up at E2 Language this week. We're going to focus on just one task today. This is just a sample class. So we're going to look just at retail lecture. And I know that that strikes fear into the hearts of some people. And then at the end, we'll look at study tips and maybe a bit of a bonus as well. Okay, let's get started. Now, if you have questions along the way, please just pop them into the chat and I'll just open my chat again. It's disappeared on me. There we are. So any questions, just pop them into the chat. If you're on Zoom, if you're on YouTube, also put them into the YouTube chat, but you are a little bit behind us on Zoom. So just, I think it's less than a minute, but a little bit behind. So, but I will monitor the YouTube as well. Okay, and welcome Khadija from Somalia. Okay, thank you for joining us, Khadija. Okay, so just very quickly, we'll look at this in more detail at the end, but very quickly today, later today, we've got 2 more speaking classes, methods and advanced, and at the end, I'll tell you the difference between those classes. Oh, I'll just grab a pointer while I think of it, so you can see what I'm pointing to, what I'm talking about. Here we are. Okay. So 2 more speaking classes. Later in the week, we've got 2 listening, speaking, writing, reading. So we have 2 of everything each week. And those classes are then repeated at different times during the week for different time zones. So do be aware that there are repeat classes. And then we also have small group classes. Small group classes, usually 3 or 4 students, sometimes 2, sometimes 5, but usually 3 or 4 students focusing on usually 1, sometimes 2 particular parts of the PTE test. So they're great value as well. Okay. Oh, yes, and a bonus coming up, or 2 things here. So there's a bonus coming up at the end. I can give you a link to some extra materials for retail lecture. And just a reminder, on Wednesday, there is a masterclass with Jay. So every second Wednesday, we have a masterclass with Jay. Excellent. If you can attend those, you're going to learn a lot. They're great. Fantastic teacher. I'm sure you all know Jay. Okay, so we're just going to dive in. Do we have any questions before we dive? No, nothing, no questions. Let's do it. Okay, so first thing we want to look at is the method. How do you manage retail lecture? And what you're going to see is a picture. Sometimes it's a little video, usually it's a picture. So here we've got a picture if you look at this picture, so you're sitting in the test, you see this picture, and you've just got about 10 seconds. And so very quickly, what do you think the lecture is going to be about? Pop something into the chat. If you see this, what do you immediately think of? You don't need to think deeply, just very quickly. What's it going to be about? Pop something into the chat, guys. Lady headset map. Yep, that's what we're looking at. Pilot, yes. Okay, so it's about a pilot, female pilot looking at a map. I can see a helicopter in the background. She's probably in a helicopter as well. So we don't need to think deeply, but immediately our imagination is fired up and our vocabulary is activated relevant to this subject. So we're kind of ready, we're primed to be able to listen if we look briefly at this picture. Okay, and that's all we need to do. Very briefly, what's it going to be about? Now, also in that 10 seconds before it begins, you need to be ready to take notes. Now, how do you get ready to take notes? Well, one of the main things I found in the test is that something I need to do is, so I've got some paper here. I'm not sure if you can see what's on it or not, but basically the whole page I've scribbled all over it. That's not good. If I want to listen and take notes, I'm going to have to write it tiny on the side. What I need to do is turn to a fresh page. Now I'm ready to take notes. So in the 10 seconds, look at the picture, turn to a fresh page. Okay, the other thing you need to do, if you look at the picture on the screen there, you can see someone holding a pen, DMD, TDS. You write those letters just downwards on the page, DMD, TDS, write them down your page. Why do you do that and what do they mean? Okay, so basically what we're suggesting is that you use this structure. So it's not a template, it's a structure that's going to help you to respond to this task. You haven't got much time to think. You need to be able to minimize the decisions and thinking that you have to do. So we strongly suggest that you learn this. The speakers were discussing, they mentioned, they described, next they talked about, they discussed, finally they suggested. DMD, TDS, the speakers were discussing, they mentioned, they described, they talked about, discussed, suggested. So each of these letters represents a verb. Learn this structure, and then the shorthand is this. You write your notes next to it, and then later when you're retelling, it just becomes a reading exercise. You know, this D means the speakers were discussing, they mentioned, they described. So once you learn this, you can use shorthand, DMD, TDS, you write a few notes next to it. Okay, and then it's going to make it easier for your retell. Okay, this is assuming two speakers, one speaker, the speaker was discussing, he mentioned, or the speaker was discussing, she mentioned, she described, male, female, or is it plural? But always the same structure. Okay, so so you've got about 10 seconds to set up your page, you're ready to take your notes, you've got your DMD, TDS, you've looked at the picture, you can focus, you're going to listen and take notes. What you're going to do is just take a few notes. You don't want to write War and Peace, you don't want to write a novel, you don't want whole sentences, just a few words. And so when you're listening, you're focusing on understanding. The few words you write are going to help you to remember. They're kind of a memory aid, an aid for your memory. So you listen and take notes. Once the audio has finished, then you've got your content. That's your content. Now your job is just to retell. So you use your sentence beginnings and your notes, and now you're just going to talk. You're going to talk for around 35 seconds. So anywhere between 30 and 40 is good. Under 30, probably not enough information. Over 40, you'll be cut off. You won't have finished your conclusion. So the sweet spot is 35 seconds, but aim for anywhere between 30 and 40. That should be what you usually do. Okay, so here's an example. So I've got some notes here. Now imagine that we've listened to something. We didn't really understand everything, but we did write down some notes. So this is kind of the content that we have to work with. And obviously you haven't listened to this and I haven't listened to it. I just made it up. Okay, but so imagine that these were the notes we took. This is our content. Once we've got the notes, the audio is finished, now we're speaking. And we'll do some together in a moment. Okay, but first of all, just an example. All I have to do now is speak fluently using this content. Okay, the speaker was discussing New York. She mentioned that the Statue of Liberty is in the bay there. She described how her parents arrived in New York in 1937, just before World War II. Then she talked about how they opened a shoe shop in a small laneway. Next, she described how the community at the time was a very close-knit community. And finally, she suggested that today, New York is a multicultural city. Okay, now I didn't time myself. It was probably roundabout right. Okay, but was the content perfect? I don't know. I didn't really understand everything. I didn't hear it. Okay, but this was my information, and my job from this point was to speak fluently. Did I do that? Yes, I did. Full marks. I did it fluently. That's your goal. Once you've got your notes, go for the fluency. Okay, let's keep moving then. So we're going to do one now. Are you ready to jump in? You're going to need pen and paper to take your notes. You should also just generally have your phone and a recording app. There are lots and lots of free recording apps. If you haven't got one, make sure you grab one. I've got a Samsung, and I just use one called Voice Recorder. It's free. It's really simple. I've got to unlock my phone, so I won't show you, but it's very simple. I just click it open, click record, click stop, click playback. Easy. But if you do this, it means you can start to evaluate your own performance. Do you sound the way you thought you sounded? Are those sounds clear? You can analyze your own performance, which is a very, very useful thing to do. Okay, so I'm assuming you've got pen and paper. If you've got a recording app, you should be recording yourself. Okay, we've looked at the image. We decided it was about pilots, maybe female pilots, maybe something about map reading. Are we ready to take notes? Have you got your pad, your pen? Have you written DMD, TDS? Okay, and then, so I've got a timer here. I'm only going to give you 3 seconds to prep because you've looked at the picture, you've got your notes ready. The audio, always between 60 and 90 seconds, somewhere in there. So you're going to have a short time to prep, then you're going to listen, then you've got 10 seconds before you have to begin speaking. When you speak, you use your notes, you're just going for the fluency. Make sure you record yourself if you've got an app. Always very, very useful to do that. Okay, I'm going to look at one question before I hit begin. So what have we got? Gaurav has a question. Gaurav's saying, if we just write keywords or some random point, but I couldn't make a proper sentence with it, can I just say those words using the formats? Yes, you can, so long as you're making sentences, Gaurav. You cannot say individual words, and later on we'll look at why you can't do that. So you must be making sentences, but if you've got some of your facts not quite right, or you didn't quite understand something and you avoided part of it, or you gave some incorrect information, Gaurav, it isn't a disaster. This is not all or nothing. It's not like you get 0 or you get 90. Somewhere in between is what you're going to get. And what you're trying to do is maximize your score towards the 90, even if you didn't fully understand it or something's gone wrong. You're just maximizing your score, doing your best, Gaurav. But we'll have a look in more detail in a moment. Let's just do one first. I'll get rid of my picture. You don't need to keep looking at me. Okay, are you ready? Pen and paper ready? Off we go.
So, Alexa, you've been a helicopter pilot for quite a while now. Can you tell our young listeners who may be thinking about this career, can you tell them about a typical day at work?
Well, I know it sounds like it's all glam and glitz, and sometimes it is. Sometimes I fly famous people from one destination to another. In fact, recently I took Tom Hanks and his wife out across the Great Barrier Reef. We had a biologist and an oceanographer on board too, so it was interesting to see the area, hear their perspective, and to see and hear how Tom responded. But that's not a typical day. A typical day, well, every day, every flight, starts off with a weather check. Then there's a systems check, to ensure that the aircraft has adequate oil and lubricants, flight controls are checked, along with the engine, rotor systems, gearboxes. Then the craft is fueled.
And then you meet your passengers at the airport.
Actually, the pickup location varies. It can be in a garden, a sports field, hotel, golf course, workplace. It varies so much. A typical flight is 30 minutes to 2 hours long, and we usually cover a distance of between 150 and 500 kilometres. During the flight, I'll describe the route and keep my passengers informed of any interesting points along the way.
And what is...
Getting ready. Okay, just about to start speaking now. Okay, how did you go? Put something into the chat. Do you feel like you did a good job, or was there an issue? How did you go? Okay, and while you're doing that, Mehanas has an excellent question. Can we write in the final exam? Yes, you can. You can take as many notes as you like, but what you cannot do is start writing before your test begins. At some point they'll say, Mehanez, you can begin now. At that point you can write anything you like, but before that it's considered cheating. So do be aware of that. Don't write anything before they say to you, your test is finished now. Okay, so Mingling, you're saying that you haven't finished. Okay, in the test, you've only got 40 seconds. If it cuts you off, then you haven't really got a conclusion. You'll lose a few marks for that. Better to drop some information and finish within the 40 seconds. Okay, so Malathi, some hesitations and you were cut off. Ivy, you couldn't finish. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is issues with time management. So let's go on a little bit. So we'll look at the marking in a moment, how you are assessed and what that means for your time management. Okay, so these were my notes and I really wasn't listening then. I was kind of reading some of the things that you guys were writing. And so all I've got is my notes. And even though I was the speaker, I don't remember exactly what it was, but all I'm going to do is aim for fluency. Okay, the speakers were discussing helicopter pilots. They mentioned that it sounds like quite a glamorous and glitzy job, but in fact, it's not really that. They described how on a typical day, they start with a weather check and talked about how they need to check the aircraft systems. They need to check that they have enough fuel. Then they discussed pickup locations and said that sometimes they're at airports, but they can also be at strange places. They can be in parks, for example. Finally, they suggested that the average flight lasts anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours. Okay, now a couple of things with that. I made a bit of a mistake, a bit of a repetition here. It wasn't a big problem, it was okay. Now I wasn't using a clock. If I had been using a clock and if I was short of 30 seconds, I could have included this information. My feeling was I was about right, so I dropped this information. You have to be prepared to drop information if you've got a lot of it. Okay, so Gaurav's asking, I've never seen that question before, Gaurav. Interesting. I've been teaching this for over 4 years. No one's ever asked, but it is a very good question. Gaurav's saying, can we just stop listening after 30 or 40 seconds? Instead of listening to the whole audio, because that's going to give us time to revise the notes, so we're not going to get stuck with speaking. Very interesting question, Gaurav. I like your thinking. However, I would suggest it's far better to listen and understand. And just imagine you're telling a friend about what you just listened to. And the idea of these notes is just to prompt you. And if you make a few mistakes, doesn't matter too much, Gaurav. Better to understand and do the best you can with the content, to write down the best notes that you can. Okay, what else have we got? Mingling saying, for the oral fluency, we can't use ums or ahs. Mingling, the odd and ah doesn't matter. A native speaker is going to say and ah occasionally. The problem is if there are a lot of ums and ahs, so there's not much content because there's a lot of points where you're not speaking or you're umming and ahhing. That's a problem. Don't worry about the odd one though. Okay, interesting questions. Manish is asking, can we change the arrangement of DMD, TDS? Absolutely. But what I do suggest is that you use the same one every time. It means you don't need to think about it too much. It's when you're thinking, when you're making decisions, that's when you're affecting your fluency. So be consistent. It's going to be easier. Okay, so if we look at the marking, look at, 15 marks altogether, 3 criteria. First one, content. If we look at this, you've got accurate, thorough relationships, conclusions. Now, if you just write down, just say a whole lot of words that are relevant, you're not talking about relationships at all. You're not talking about conclusions. So just saying words is not enough. You have to put them into sentences. However, if you say the speakers were discussing helicopter pilots and they mentioned, and then you continue, now you're talking about relationships. This doesn't mean deep relationships, very thoughtful, considered ideas. It just means, how does this point relate to that point? Well, they're helicopter pilots. They fly different passengers around the place. It's a relationship. It's people and what they do. That's all you have to do. Conclusions, again, it's a relationship. How does the last point you made, how does it relate to what you're saying? Or even the fact that you're saying finally or in conclusion. So these ones mean you can't use just words. You need to be using full sentences. These ones, accurate and thorough. Now that's interesting. You don't actually have to be accurate and thorough. I think they're exaggerating what they need, what you need here. What you do need is to be relevant and largely accurate. It's impossible to be completely accurate and thorough given the time frame. Even as a native speaker, I can't be fully accurate and particularly fully thorough. 40 seconds, it's not enough time and not enough time to prepare. And I've done the test several times. I always get 90. I know I'm not thorough. I'm just pulling out some main points. What I'm saying is on topic. That's what you need to do. Okay, fluency. So once I've got my notes, now I'm not worried too much about the content. I'm just going to use my notes. I'm going to watch the clock. If I'm getting around 30 seconds and I've still got 2 more lines of content, I'll drop one and go into my conclusion because I only need to get to 30 seconds. So be prepared to drop something. If you see that you're going to be short, just add something, add a few words to a couple of the sentences, make something a bit longer. Okay, so you're going for the fluency. And pronunciation, this is something that you need to work on before the class. Make sure that you're improving your production of different sounds. You don't need to sound exactly like a native speaker, but native-like, what it means is that we can understand you. And sometimes I listen to people and I have to really work hard to understand what they've said. That's not native-like. Native-like, your sounds might be different to mine, but I can understand. I can fluently understand what you're saying. That's native-like. That's what you're going for. Okay. So do we have questions at the moment? So I'm also saying, what if I didn't really understand the prompt? Can we just say things in our notes as long as we are fluent? Well, that's the best strategy. So 90 seconds of speaking, you didn't understand the first 20 and 10 seconds in the middle, you missed some of it. It's bad luck, Amor. You can't do anything with that. However, it's not like you're going to get 0 or you're going to get 90. It's a scale. If your content is not quite, something's not quite right with it, or you've missed a significant point, you might lose a little bit in content. It's not a disaster. So you end up with 87 instead of 90. It's perfectly okay. Once you've got your notes, you've got your content, now you're just going for the fluency. So absolutely, Amor, go for the fluency. Gaurav, DMD, TDS, that each of those letters stands for a verb. described, mentioned, discussed, talked about, described again, repeated, and finally he suggested or she suggested. Wendy, same question. Don't come late next time, guys. Okay, so each of this stands for the structure, and we looked at that earlier. Join our live classes, you'll see the structure there. Okay, so we're going to do another one. You're going to need pen and paper. Okay, and again, we've got a picture. What's it going to be about this time? So you only get 10 seconds to look at it. What's it going to be about? Put something into the chat quickly. Okay. Headaches, yeah, excellent. Stress, yes. Stress management, beautiful. So that's all you need to do in that time. So you're going to look briefly at the picture. What's it about? You're going to write down DMD, TDS, because that's going to help you to retell it when you put your notes next to it. And Wendy and Amor, you'll see an example of the use of this in a moment. Khadijah's saying he's overthinking. Yeah, I wondered if he was levitating. Actually, levitating is when you concentrate hard like a yogi and you can lift your body from the chair. But yes, probably headaches, stress is most likely. Okay, guys, have you got your pen and paper? Okay, and just before we begin, Manisha is saying, I'm afraid about not speaking fluently. Practice it. You don't need to be perfect, Manisha. You're just going to do your best. And your goal in this task is keep speaking. Go for around 35 seconds, be on topic. That's it. Just do your best with that. The more practice, the more confident, the more fluent you're going to become. Okay, you ready, guys? So I'm only going to give you 3 seconds to prep and then you're going to listen. I'll get rid of my picture. Here we go.
Headaches can be caused by a number of things and may be primary or secondary. Primary headaches just happen and are not caused by any other injury or illness. They include tension headaches, migraines, and cluster headaches, and can be triggered by stress, poor posture, dehydration, lack of sleep, or eye strain, among other things. Secondary headaches, on the other hand, are caused by an underlying health condition. They're commonly caused by head injury, hormones, medication, flu, or allergic reaction to a food or environmental substance. Certain foods can assist with headaches and migraines. In particular, orange, yellow, and green vegetables are recommended, along with spring water. Non-citrus fruits like cherries and cranberries have also been shown to be beneficial. Many people find that over the long term, a headache diary is a useful tool. There are several free apps available, or you may prefer a pen and paper version, which is available for download. In general, the diary encourages you to note the time and date of onset and also the duration and severity. It is also suggested that you note any warning signs you may observe. With this information, you can get a perspective on any patterns, and in time, you can help to identify triggers.
So getting ready to speak. Off you go. Okay. So Manisha has the exam day after tomorrow, so the exam on Wednesday. My advice is don't overthink it, don't worry about it, don't aim to be 100% accurate. Go for the fluency. Do your best with content, go for the fluency after that, Manisha. Practice. Get the confidence. Okay. So sample notes. Again, I wasn't really listening. I was kind of reading your notes, reading your comments. So these were the notes that I took some weeks ago when I put this together. So let's have a look. What would I do with it? So now I'm in the test. I can't remember everything. I've got my notes. Let me have a go. I remember it was a male speaker. I'm going to use the male pronoun. The speaker was discussing headaches. He mentioned that they can be primary or secondary. Then he described how secondary headaches are usually a result of an underlying condition. It could be a head injury, or it could just be a hormonal issue. Then he talked about how various foods can help, and in particular, foods that are orange, yellow, or green can help with a headache. Then he discussed how it can be very useful to keep a headache diary. And finally, he suggested that the reason that a diary can be useful is that it can help you to identify the things that are going to trigger headaches. Okay, again, I wasn't timing myself. If I was too close to 40 seconds, I would have made that last sentence shorter. I would have just said, finally, he suggested that a diary can be useful in helping identify triggers. Full stop. If I'm under time, I'll add a few extra words. Now, this one here, the foods, I can't really remember. I wasn't listening at the time. Maybe they didn't help. Maybe these foods are bad. Maybe they're good. I think they were good. I went with that. However, if I made a mistake, it could be okay, or it may be I would lose a bit in content. If I lose a bit in content, does it really matter if I get 87 or 90? No, I'm good. So you're just doing your best with it. You're doing it fluently. Better to make a mistake and do it fluently than to and and not have the content there. So don't overthink that content. You're just going to do your best. Okay, so Lilith has a recommendation, non-citrus foods. Okay, so the acronym here, DMD, TDS, the speakers were discussing, or the speaker was discussing, he mentioned something, he described something, then he talked about something else, he discussed this and that, finally he suggested blah-de-blah-blah. Okay, so this is our structure. And once you know those sentence beginnings, you can use the shortcut DMD, TDS, write it on your page, notes next to it. Now it's a reading exercise. You're not thinking up the beginnings of sentences and did I say this? Have I said that? No, you're just reading them in order, one after the other. If you had 3 hours to think about it, you could probably do something pretty perfect. You've only got a few seconds. Even as a native speaker, it's challenging. So you're just doing your best with it. Okay. So again, content, fluency, pronunciation, 5, 5, 5. So 5 for each of them. What did you get? Give yourself a mark out of 15. Pop it into the chat. Ivy's asking, if we talk about 6 points, 6 to 7 seconds each, can we only talk about 3 or 4 points? If that's all you've noted, Ivy, then yes, it does make the job a little bit harder because now you have to add a little bit more to your notes. So if you've just got a few words next to each one, that's the easiest. But if you missed it and you've only got 3 or 4 notes, absolutely aim to get over 30 seconds with your 3 or 4 points. That's fine. So Lilith, around 11, that's okay. Malathi, 12. Be aware of where you're taking marks off yourself because that's the thing you need to work on. If you're taking marks off for content because you didn't really understand it, work on your listening. You took marks off for pronunciation. Okay, what's the issue? What do you need to work on with your pronunciation? Or was it the fluency? And I like this task because everyone can improve their fluency. This is the place you can pick up marks quickly. Content, listening, you can practice, you can certainly get better. Pronunciation is longer term, but you can practice and get better. But oral fluency, you can do this in a few days with practice, changing that mindset. I don't want perfection. I want to be pretty good. I want to be fluent. I'm going to just do my best. That mindset is going to pick up marks for you. Lilith, interesting point. Lilith has just written in Zoom, I always think of the correct grammar. Don't overthink the grammar, Lilith. You're not actually scored. If you look at this, where's the grammar? It's not there. Grammar is only going to be relevant if your grammar is so bad that you're not communicating, that I don't know. Are you talking about yesterday, today, in the future? And I don't know the relationship between this and this. Was this the father or the daughter? I don't know. If your grammar is so bad it's affecting the content, then yes, it's a problem. But a few grammatical errors, you're not even scored on that, Lilith. Don't worry, go for fluency. Okay. All right, so that's retail lecture. In a moment, I'll give you links to a bit more practice that you can do with retail lecture. And what I want you to do with those links, with that homework, I guess, is go for that fluency. So take your notes, use DMD, TDS, go for the fluency. Okay. So just generally what's happening at E2 language, and then I'll give you the links to the homework. On Wednesday, masterclass with Jay. That's free for all members. You can just come along and join that. That's the same time. Sorry, it's 2 hours after this class today, a little bit later. Later today, we've got 2 speaking classes, methods and advanced. We'll look at that in a minute. What does methods mean? What does advanced mean? And then later in the week, we've also got listening, writing and reading, small group classes as well for writing and speaking. Okay. So this is the timetable. We've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday across the top. So Monday, what have we got happening? So this is the class we're doing at the moment. We're doing a free sampler for speaking. We've got small group classes. There's one immediately after this class and one later in the day. I think the later one is full, but there's a couple of spots in the writing class. So they're going to be looking at essay introductions and body and answering the question. In about an hour from now, we have a new member welcome. So just showing you around the website. And these are the 2 classes later today. So these are our live classes in the orange box. These are our main 8 live classes, and these change every week. So we've got 2 speaking. If you attended both of these, the content is completely different. Both of them will go through all 5 speaking tasks, but different examples, different things that you need to do. The same with the writing and the reading. You go through all 5 reading tasks on both of them, but they're different questions. So if you attend both, they're different classes, different material. You won't know the answers to start with. But the difference between methods and advanced, methods classes move a little bit more slowly. They explain the methods, answer questions that you might have about methods, a little bit of work on grammar and vocab. The later classes we call the advanced classes. Here we assume that you already know the methods, you've done lots of practice, you're getting ready to do the test quite soon, and so you'll get more practice. So here, for example, you might do 1 retail lecture. Here you do 2 or 3 retail lectures. So more examples of each question here. And then these classes are repeated during the week. You can attend, as a member, you can attend as many of these classes as you would like to. Okay. Once every month, we have an Ask Me Anything session. So Colin and I usually do that one at the end of the month, last Saturday. And on Friday, we have a class that echoes the class today. So this week we did speaking in today's class. So we'll have a free speaking class, and this will be the regular speaking methods class. And so that's a repeat of this one here. Repeat classes are live classes, different teacher, same material. So I'm not sure who's teaching this one, but I'll be teaching this one on Friday. So different teacher, same material. If you attend this, it will be exactly the same material here, so you probably don't want to attend both. Okay, do we have any questions? Mingling's asking the cost of 1 session of the group class. Yes, it's $19, Mingling. Boone is a silver member. What can you access? Boone, you can access everything. All of these classes are available to you. So all of the paid members can access all of the methods and advanced classes. We also have videos of them. So if you miss a class or you can't attend at a particular time, everything is videoed. And when you get into the website, on the left side, you'll see recorded classes, Boone. So you can see all of the classes then, if you can't attend live. Sorry, when I said everything, I did make a mistake there, Boone. These classes here, the small group classes, are additional cost, but everything else is available to you. All of the materials on the platform are available to you. And I think you also have tutorials and small group classes. So I think we've mentioned some of those here, Boone. Okay, as a member, make sure you use the study pathway. So you populate that. You just need to answer 3 or 4 questions. It will create your study pathway, individual for what you need, and you can just work through that methodically. You should be doing things in your study, like if you plan to attend a live class, it's a really good idea before the live class to do some work on the platform, to be going through questions, checking example answers. When you do that, it raises questions in your mind. You come to the live class, those questions are answered. So this kind of primes you to be ready and get the most advantage from the live class. Okay. And as a member, you can watch as many recordings as you want, and depending on your package, you might have 25 or unlimited live classes. Okay, a lot of people ask me, how long do I need to study? Depends. Depends what's your level now, what level are you targeting, what's your life like? Are you really busy, or have you got a lot of time to study? Very hard question to answer, but in general, you should be studying regularly every day, minimum 1 hour for everyone, every day. Up to 4 hours, depending what you need to do. Are you only learning about the 20 question types and your level of English is fine, or are you improving your English and learning about the question types? So 2 different ways to do it. So if you're about the right level, so you're quite a strong speaker or strong enough for the level that you need, you're going to need up to a month. Some people can do it in 2 weeks, but up to a month if you're about the right level, because what you need to do is learn the 20 tasks and how to maximize your score. As an example of that, before I started teaching the test, I knew nothing about it. Hadn't read any books, hadn't heard anything about PTE. This was 4 or 5 years ago. The very first thing, I went and did the test. Now, as a native speaker who's been teaching English for 40 years, for a very long time, and who's in particular, I've been working at universities, teaching IELTS, I would expect to do very well. However, in the speaking, I only got 83. Why did I get 83? I didn't really know what to do with describe image or retell lecture. So even as a native speaker, I had to learn what the task was, what the examiners are looking for, and how to maximize my marks. So everyone, native speakers, everyone needs to learn those tasks and work out the way to maximize your score. Of course, once I learnt them, 90, no problem. For you, the same thing. Learn the tasks, and then you can display your real level of English. Okay, if you don't know your level, we've got the mini mock test you can take. Now, the mini mock test, it's going to give you a score for speaking, writing, reading, listening, and an overall score. You get a score for each of the 20 tasks. You know which ones you got right, which ones you got wrong, and you can find out why. For the speaking and the writing, you get individual feedback from a teacher. They go through your essay, summarise written text, summarise spoken text, and all of the speaking tasks. They'll look at them, they'll say, this is what you're doing well, this is the score you would get today, this is what you need to bring your mark up, this is your weak area. So that's very, very useful. You can attend the small group classes, so have a look at what they're focusing on. You might find one on describe image, retell lecture, write essay. So we've got quite a number of small group classes. Find one that suits you, work on that task. Assessment tasks, a lot of people find that really, really useful. An assessment task means you can write an essay, you submit it through to it, you just click submit, goes through to a teacher looks through it, gives you a score, this is what you're doing well, on all of the criteria, this is how you're going, this is my suggestion for what you need to do to improve your score. So you can get that for all of the speaking and all of the writing tasks. Very, very valuable. Attend a tutorial. For many of you, it's part of your package. So if you have a silver package, I think you have 2 tutorials from memory. Tutorial is one-on-one with a teacher. It's a session that goes for 45 minutes. It's just you and the teacher. So you make an appointment at a time that suits you. When you make the appointment, you just choose 3 things you want to work on. I want to work on retell lecture, read aloud, and summarize written text, for example. The teacher comes prepared to help you with those things. And it's a session that helps you to really identify things that you're good at and things that you're not so good at that you need to work on. And the teacher can help to build your confidence and the strategies that you need to improve any areas that are a bit weak. Very, very useful. If it's part of your package, make sure you take it, guys. Okay. If you want more practice, or this is not going to work today, we've got a bit of a problem with our system. I'm going to put a link into the chat. So give me a second and I'll put a link into Zoom, and I'm not sure how to do that on YouTube. Give me a second to think about that. I'll put a link into the chat in Zoom. 1 second. 2 seconds maybe. Okay, so that's one link and this is the other. Okay, oh, I do know how to do it on Zoom, just this page is in my way. Oh, I had this problem before. I can't actually enter the chat in Zoom. I'm not sure why. Oh, maybe this will do it. I got it. So this is one thing, and the other one I'll just put into YouTube as well. Okay, so those links will take you through to some extra material. You can do a bit of extra practice with them. And what I'd like you to do is to what? What do I want you to do? What have I been suggesting all along? Okay, so I've been suggesting that when you're listening, you're focusing on listening, just taking a few notes, using DMD, TDS, and from my memory, I think that's explained in the material that I've just given you links to. So you're focusing on listening, taking notes. That's your content. That's your listening part of it. Once you've got that, then you're onto the speaking. With the speaking, once you're at this point, now you're just going for the fluency. You do your best with the content. If you didn't understand something, it's bad luck. You can't listen again. Just do your best with it. And the aim is to maximize your mark. Bring it as close to 90 as you can. And I can assure you, a lot of our students get 90. Their English is not perfect. They make mistakes, but they're confident. They know what to do. They do it confidently. They're getting a really high score. You can do that too. So don't overthink it. Once you've got your content, you're going for the fluency, guys. Okay, that's it for today. Any questions? Is there anything you'd like to ask just before we finish? April, yes, practice. That's what you need to do, April. And I meant to say that as well. Thank you. My pleasure, Lolly. Thank you very much for joining us. Remember, guys, there is a free class as well, a free speaking class, which is a normal speaking class, but it is free on Friday. So if you'd like to join us then, we'd love to see you. My pleasure, Amor. I hope to see you on Friday. And Mert, thank you for joining us. Good luck, guys. If you've got the test coming up this week with speaking, don't overthink it. Don't try and be perfect. Just do your best. Go for the fluency. Yeah, you're going to make some mistakes. Even as a native speaker, I make some mistakes. Perfectly okay. You can still score really well. Do it fluently. Do it confidently. Best of luck, everyone. Take care.